Well, on MTTV we can cover almost anything and we go highbrow, lowbrow, whatever, but Libertarian Anarchy is something we've never touched on yet. But Richard, you are a gentleman here who's got the subject matter ready, and you're bringing a guest over to talk on that very subject. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be highbrow, lowbrow, or somewhere in the middle, but on the 22nd of March, as a Saturday, I've arranged for Professor Gerard Casey of Dublin University to come over to the Isle of Man. Professor Casey teaches a course in political philosophy at Dublin on the politics of anarchy and the idea that a society can exist and function very well in the complete absence of a state or any form of government.
Well, that's interesting to start with. And he can make a good case for this, can he?
He can. He's written a book on the subject, defending various aspects of how different, well, first of all, why we should try and move to a society it's absent of government. I think a few people might be intrigued by that idea. And then how various services we now associate with government would function. And particularly, he specialised in law and order, because that's kind of the big one, really. That's the one that everyone sort of comes down to. And he looked a lot at the Irish Free State for the 1500-year period, where Ireland had no form of central government to speak of. There was maybe 1,500 kings or something of all little bits of territory, and how law and order was carried out at that time, and what we could learn from that for today.
But don't people still collect taxes, for instance, and money is required by somebody to do something, or as you say, nothing at all?
Well, if you think about anarchy, simply means anarchos is the absence of rulers, the absence of states. So the vast majority of interactions we have, economic or otherwise, throughout our lives are anarchist interactions. If you buy a cup of coffee, I'm agreeing to give my money and I'm getting a cup of coffee in exchange. No one had to put a gun to anyone's head. There was no violence involved. There was no taxation involved. So the vast majority of services are provided in anarchist ways. We're just saying you should extend that a bit more, get rid of the taxation, get rid of the violence involved in it, the sort of hidden violence, because ultimately it's really, government's no different from the mafia in the way it collects its funds, and services should be provided on the market.
Okay, it's certainly interesting. I mean, why are you putting these things on? What drives you on this?
I just find these ideas fascinating. I find it kind of amazing that there's this thing called government and we all accept it has to exist. We may love it, we may think it's a necessary evil, but from cradle to grave we all believe in it, and it's one of the things you go through life and never question. And then you come across someone or a group of philosophy that says, no, we've got it all wrong. You know, this is a disastrous idea. This is the problem, not the solution. And that's kind of really intriguing to me, really fascinating.
Now you do a lot of blogging on
I do, yeah. I have a blog, deepstatenews.blogspot.com. Where I blog about either global events, but looking at it from a kind of anarchist lens, looking at just common problem like the banker bailouts or something like that, and do we need more regulation or less, or is the state indeed the problem? Analysing things through the state being the cause of our problems and not the solution.
And the Isle of Man as its own micro-government, how do you rate it? I mean, would you see this as a good example to try it out here?
Well, I'd see it as a good example to try it out here, whether it's like the Isle of Man or North Korea. Everywhere should get rid of government. I'm not equating the two. This really isn't a dig at our particular government, which is, I've written on the advert that like that's kind of the national sport on the Isle of Man is criticising government and having a moan about them, and but always the hope that, well, you know, in 2.5 years we'll get a better lot of people in, you know, and that's the dream. But it's not really about, it's criticising the very principle of government, that the concept of government itself is inherently dysfunctional, just in the way, you know, when we talk about like the old Soviet bloc or something, people don't think that all failed necessarily because of the personalities involved. It's that communism was structurally just totally dysfunctional. You can't have that level of central planning. It just turns to chaos.
Well, it does sound interesting. So again, who's this going to appeal to?
I hope anyone who's kind of interested in the future of the Isle of Man, anyone who's interested in how a society could develop on more non-violent means, and anyone who's just interested in unusual ideas and philosophically challenging ideas. Gerard's going to lecture for about 40 minutes on the night, and then he's hoping to open it up to the audience questions and have a real vibrant dialogue going.
And that's important, isn't it, to get that?
Oh yeah, because this is what he tells me he does with his students, because he presents the case and they all fire back, but what about the roads, or how are the healthcare system, or, you know, something like that. Yeah. All these objections instantly come into people's minds, and he does his best to at least show how it's feasible that these kind of essential services, social welfare, and health and education, could be provided in a free society.
Okay. Well, it's a Hydro in Douglas. When and where?
Hydro Hotel, 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 22nd of March. Tickets are £7 in advance and £10 on the door, and you can get an advance ticket or find out more from calling me on 476 370.